This wasn't a loss of control.
It was the moment authority stopped being real. January 25, 1995. Selhurst Park. A kung fu kick that echoed through football history. But here's what they don't tell you about that night. The incident itself wasn't the problem. The problem was what happened after. Because football depends on obedience, not agreement, not understanding, obedience. And the moment obedience breaks, the system has one job: reassert authority. What followed wasn't authority, it was theatre. Football sells order. Referees in black. White lines on green pitches. Touchlines that contain chaos. Authority figures standing between the game and anarchy. But authority only works if it's believed, and belief doesn't come from punishment. It comes from legitimacy, from consistency, from the perception that the system can't be broken. The Premier League in 1995 was transitioning from local sport to global spectacle. Cameras everywhere. Broadcast deals worth millions. A product being packaged for international consumption. The system expected compliance. It had protocols for dissent. Yellow cards for arguing. Red cards for violence. Bans for repeat offenders. What it never planned for was someone who simply didn't care. Eric Cantona wasn't an accident waiting to happen. He was a pattern. In France, he'd called his national team manager a bag of shit on live television, thrown a ball at a referee's head, walked up to every member of a disciplinary committee, called them idiots, and left. He'd retired from football at 24, then unretired, been transferred 7 times in 8 years. Leeds United's manager, Howard Wilkinson, said Cantona wasn't prepared to abide by the rules that operated for everybody else. So Leeds sold him to Manchester United for £1 million. And United made him untouchable because he delivered something the system couldn't replace. 4 league titles in 5 seasons, 2 domestic doubles, the catalyst that ended United's 26-year wait for a championship. Ferguson knew what Cantona was. Everyone knew. But winning made it tolerable. Crystal Palace manager Alan Smith had a plan. He told defender Richard Shaw to stick to Cantona like a rash. For 48 minutes, Shaw did exactly that. Shirt pulling, body checks, constant physical pressure. At half-time, United players told Ferguson that Cantona was visibly agitated, that he should be substituted. Ferguson ignored them. 3 minutes into the second half, Cantona kicked out at Shaw. Red card. His 5th in 6 months. He folded down his famous upturned collar and walked toward the tunnel. That should have been the story. Another temperamental genius losing control. Another ban. Another news cycle. But Matthew Simmons had other ideas. What happened next took 7 seconds. Simmons raced down 11 rows of stairs, got to the front of the stand, started hurling abuse. Radio commentator Jonathan Pearce captured it live. Quote, "He's kicked, he's punched a fan. Eric Cantona has jumped in and scissor kung fu kicked a fan." Cantona vaulted the advertising boards, launched himself feet first into the crowd, studs connecting with Simmons' chest. Punches followed. Chaos erupted. And in that moment, something fundamental broke. Not just a rule, not just a boundary, the perception that football's authority was real. Because here's what matters. The system had seen this coming. 5 red cards in 6 months, a documented history of volatile behavior, multiple warnings, and it did nothing, because Cantona was winning matches.
What followed looked decisive.
Manchester United banned him until the end of the season, fined him £20,000. The FA extended the ban to 8 months, added another £10,000 fine. FIFA made it worldwide. The courts gave him 2 weeks in prison, later reduced to 120 hours community service. Statements were released. FA Chief Executive Graham Kelly called it a stain on the game, said it brought shame on football. The media condemned. The establishment fumed. £3 million was wiped from United's stock market value. It looked like accountability. But authority isn't enforced after the fact. It's established before resistance. Then came the press conference. Everyone expected an apology, remorse, rehabilitation. Instead, Cantona walked to the microphone and said this, quote, "When seagulls follow the trawler, it is because they think sardines will be thrown into the sea." Then he stood up and left. No questions. No explanation. Just that. The Guardian called him nitroglycerine in human form. He fled to France, vowed never to return. Ferguson had to fly to Paris to convince him to come back. And here's the critical part. He did come back, because United needed him. Later on, he said, attacking Simmons was a great feeling. That he only regretted not kicking him harder. He called it a mistake, but said he had no regrets. That's not the statement of someone who learned a lesson. That's someone who knows the system couldn't really touch him. And he was right. 2 years later, at the peak of his powers, he walked into United chairman Martin Edwards' office, handed him a prepared statement, and retired. Aged 30. Just walked away, on his terms, as he always had. And United had no leverage to stop him, because the relationship was never equal. They needed him more than he needed them. That's what the Kung Fu kick really revealed. Not that Cantona was out of control, but that football's control was an illusion, built on compliance, dependent on obedience, fragile when challenged by someone truly irreplaceable. The system moved on, but it moved on unchanged, because changing would mean admitting that authority in football isn't real. It's negotiated, and the next time a player tests those boundaries, the same calculation will be made. Is this player worth more than our rules? That's the problem.